Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rona Rants. This is podcast number 7. I'm pretty happy because we're reaching close to number 10, and that's one of my milestones. And I'm pretty happy with all the feedback that I got from the last one. I think the format was quite good, and yeah, I'm just constantly trying to reach like a stable idea of what I want for this podcast. So it's going really well, and the podcast after this one, we will have another guest on the show. But yeah, this podcast will be solo. And what I wanted to talk about today is something that is really important to me, I guess, and I have a lot of experience in, and it's how is it being an immigrant, and how to be an immigrant? No, how is it being an immigrant? What is the experience like? Because maybe some of you viewers or listeners have never left your country, besides for short-term traveling, and you would like to just get some idea of how it is to live outside. So I've lived outside of Portugal for 5 years now, almost 5 years, and 3 of those years were in Sweden, and 2 of them in Germany, Berlin. Like I want to talk about like how it is in general being an immigrant, and how, like, what are my views on each of these countries, these 2 countries, um, and yeah, just give my overall opinions on this. So let's get to it. So the first thing, I want to talk about the good aspects first, and then talk a little bit about the bad aspects of living outside of your own country. I'm gonna put money out of the equation because if you're from Portugal, yeah, of course it's a benefit, moving out, like working in another country, because you're probably gonna get more money. But let's assume that let's be more generalistic in the case you're from a wealthier country. So good aspects. First of all, one of the cool aspects is that you can use English. If you're a fan of English in general as a language, if you enjoy using it, it's great, because basically now you have a need for it. You need to speak English, right, to survive. You can't rely on your own language, but unless your language has a wide span of countries and you're moving to a country where, you're using your language. But here I'm kind of like assuming that you would move to a country where you don't use your language, then you get to use English. I think English is a great language overall. It doesn't have these hierarchical barriers and these formality barriers that some languages do, especially Romance languages. Um, so it's quite easy to get close to people and to express yourself in meaningful ways, like with ease. So I think English, the fact that you can use English is a great benefit, is a great plus a lot of people underestimate. So then another good aspect would be, because you come from a certain country, right? And so you're wired in a way, like you look at, you were brought up to think in a certain way for many different things. And of course, you can educate yourself and you can read up on how other countries do things, but it's hard to properly understand why and how these new systems work unless you move to another country. And it's hard to accept that they actually do work. Like you can maybe read that I don't know, in France they do something very differently from what they do in your country, and then you think, ah, man, that must suck there. Until you move to France, and then you see, oh wow, actually it does work, and then you realize, wow, there are quite a few things in life that there are many ways to achieve the same results or even better results. And I experienced that a lot, because in Portugal there are a lot of things that we do well. We do even better than other countries. One example is our ATM system is really good. So multibanco, it's really practical. You can perform a lot of different things, like charging your phone directly. You can pay a lot of different bills directly through the ATM. Um, and there are a lot of features. Now I can't think of any, but in general, our ATM system is a lot better than the one in other countries. Oh, and of course, you don't, you it 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 includes a lot of different banks within Portugal. So you don't you don't have to go to an ATM that is specific to your bank. Maybe because our country is small and we're not like a federal country, so there's no differences between states or whatever. But I find that really annoying in Germany, for example. But we'll get more into that later. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that in Portugal we do quite well. There are some systems that are much better as well. For example, the how do you call this in English? The interstate, the highway system that we have. So Via Verde, it's like this automatic billing system that we have. So you don't have to stop and pay. Fucking hell, my English sucks. You don't have to pay. You don't have to stop and pay the taxes when you're driving, and it's got a few other benefits. But yeah, it's a great system. But there are many things in Portugal that we do really wrongly. Like we do really wrong. A lot of things are just not working that well, and so it's interesting to move to another country and see how other countries do certain things. You know, to get a more global approach. And right now, one example that I can think of is, for example, in university, in Portuguese universities in general, they're very hierarchical. So your professor has a lot of power, and the idea is kind of like, I'm saying this. My parents are university professors, so they might hate me for saying this. I think they're quite easygoing though, but basically the professors have so much power, and the mentality is that, okay, I am at the university, I want knowledge, so I'm kind of submissive to my professor, and I have to hear whatever they say, and if they tell me to fuck off, I have to fuck off. That's kind of like the thinking behind a lot of Portuguese universities, and I think Southern European universities. And the professors have so much power. Some of them are really corrupt, they're really unfair, and they're just assholes in general. A lot of professors are like this. And it feels like if you have a complaint about professor, it's hard to get things rolling in your favor, like to actually get things, to get some kind of inspection going for this on this perfection. To have someone review this professor and see if what they're doing is fucked up or not. I get the feeling that that's much harder in Portugal than it is in other countries. So, for example, in Sweden, because I studied there, the mentality is very different. So, while in Portugal there's kind of like this submissive mentality towards the professors, in Sweden it's very flat. It's a very flat hierarchy. So of course, you meet a professor, and of course you have some respect for them because they are, the professionals there, and they're very knowledgeable. But there isn't like this power thirst, and it's more like they're working for you. You So I believe the universities are mostly free. They're paid from your taxes. And in Portugal, they're okay. No, they're not. I can't say they're free. You have to pay annual fees or semester fees, but they're not that bad. Yeah, in Sweden it's mostly free, and the thing is, like, it feels like the professors are working for you. In a way. So the power dynamic is different. It's more like it feels like the students have more power there. And of course, some students are assholes and abuse it, but I think in general it's a lot better and it's more balanced, and it doesn't feel like you're begging your teacher, to help you. And in general, it's so much better for learning. I felt like in Sweden I could go to professors and easily talk to them and learn. In Portugal, I could with some, but in general, like, going up to a professor's office and asking them questions, like, they would not treat you well. At least in my university, which was Técnico. Um, and it changes everything, really. Like these small details, they change a lot of things. And yeah, so that's one example. Um, I can maybe think of a few more, but I wanted to talk about some other stuff first. But yeah, so you can find like small subsystems within different countries that are better than other countries, you know? And it's interesting to learn about them so that later you can kind of like maybe advocate for a change within your own country if you plan to move back to your own country, right? Um so so that's one thing. And then in general, when if you're always living in the same spot. Like I said, you can always educate yourself and read a lot about different cultures and find friends. Oh, I'm sorry about the fucking bottle opener noise. I keep forgetting about that. You can always meet people online and talk some shit and get to know like their how they live and what they do and how they think and so on. You can always do this. Like it's completely fine. I've done it when I was a kid. Some of my friends I met through playing games online. You can totally do it, and you can learn a lot. But I think that, of course, if you move abroad, you're much more exposed, and you will learn about cultures that you didn't even think about looking up. I learned a lot about let's say for example Syria. I didn't know anything about Syria before. And I made two Syrian friends, and they told me about the war, and they told me how it was to be like a refugee, and they told me all the stuff they went through, and it was really enlightening. If you, I think it's very enlightening because you see things from a different perspective. Um, Especially when you become friends with people that are coming from such a precarious situation. That's just one example. You can meet people from all walks of life that you wouldn't even think about. You wouldn't think about them. If you're on Google, of course you can look up a certain culture, but you're not like getting exposed to random cultures that you didn't think about. And so because of this, and because you become friends with people and you get to experience different types of food and hear different types of ideas and conflicting opinions on things that you thought were like universal. Like it really opens your mind, and it either strengthens your previous ideas, or it puts some ideas that you have into question, and then you kind of improve yourself in that sense. So that's awesome. Like that's one of the best parts of being an immigrant, but especially the food. Like learning about different types of food. Like the other day I had poutine, for example, the French. It's like fries with some gravy on top and whatever. I had heard about it before, but I would have never tried it if I was just in Portugal, probably. And now I just went randomly out in Berlin and I found them, and it's fucking lit. It's fucking lit, bro. It's really good. And I had some weird like peanut chips from Israel called bamba. They're also really worth it. Yeah, and I bet like another point which people underestimate as well is you get to meet very different looking attractive people, right? I mean, it is a benefit of moving abroad. For me, like, of course, meeting girls that are, they look different, and they're also attractive. I mean, of course Portuguese girls are also attractive, but it's different, like Portugal is not very mixed as a country, so you always get a certain type of person, more or less. And if you move abroad, you get exposed to many different types, and it's interesting. Let's put it like that. It's interesting. But now we should talk about the bad aspects. So of course, I think overall, the the pros, if you balance the pros and cons, it's really worth being an immigrant, at least for some years. Even if you plan to stay the majority of your life in your home country, I think being an immigrant for at least 1 or 2 years is definitely worth it. Like it really improves your life in general, and it improves your it improves your perspective on your own country. Like you gain insight on your own country as well. But let's talk about the bad aspects. So one of the worst aspects of being an immigrant is that you basically feel like an alien for a really long time, and this is inevitable. I think it takes quite a few years of living in a certain country for you to stop feeling like an alien. Because one of the most important things that you need to do is you need to learn the local language. You know, even if English is highly used in the area which you're living in the I can't speak anymore. Like, even if English is widely used wherever you're living, you will never feel truly included until you've learned the language. And not just learned the language, until you've like completely mastered the language. It's super important. Um, and that's, in a way, it's super annoying actually. It's annoying to have to do that. But you know, you can't be spoiled at the same time. You decided to move to another country, so that's kind of the rule that you need to apply. And it would be annoying as well if, for example, people come to Portugal and they expect something from us, from our country, and they don't even put the effort into learning Portuguese. It's annoying. I get that. It's annoying. So it's annoying for both sides. Like you do need to learn the language of the country that you're moving to. But the thing is, yeah, it takes time and it's a huge hobby. Like learning a language is not easy. People think that it won't take that long. You know, if you hear like, oh, this person has been in France for 3 years and they still don't speak French. I mean, it's hard, dude. It's hard. Like some people are more efficient at learning languages for sure, but it's hard because it's hard to find the time to learn the language, and it's hard to find the motivation to consistently work on the language, you know, because it's a huge hobby that takes up time. And if you're working, you know, you're working in a different country, it's not your country. You don't feel comfortable, you know, you don't feel 100% comfortable in that country. You want to explore stuff, you want to try some hobbies, you want to meet people, and then you have this weight on you that you have to learn this language. It's hard. It's hard. It's not as easy as people think it is to learn the language, and it's not just because you're exposing yourself to people speaking it that you're going to speak it better. It does help. It helps in the language acquisition thing, but it doesn't mean that you're going to learn it super fast. So this is important to keep in mind. It's quite annoying, that aspect of moving to another country. Um, so yeah, and also, of course, I think like even if you speak the language fluently, so you can make yourself understood and you can understand everyone, it it's still not your culture, you know. Like it will take some time until you feel like it's your culture. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, you know. Um, you still have your roots, and there's still a lot of things that you think, like you think in certain ways that maybe don't apply to the country that you're in, and maybe there's certain approaches or ways of behaving that you're used to that you don't see in this country, and it's hard to get over that. So it takes time. So yeah, you can still feel like an alien even if you're fluent. Then another problem is, and this is also not that discussed that much, but it's so in the beginning you come to the country, you don't speak the language, so you essentially fall. You need to find friends, right? So you look for people who speak English, right, or they speak your language. So what usually happens is you fall into this bubble of expats where you just meet expats. You just meet people who don't speak the language, or they mostly speak English. And so yeah, you kind of create this small ecosystem of people who are immigrants within a certain country. And, you know, of course, over time you can learn the language and make friends from that country. But it's really hard to get out of that bubble, you know, the expat bubble, and to properly assimilate within a country. Uh, and of course that kind of pulls you back from learning the language. And it's just like, it's kind of like the choice of, do you want to be comfortable or do you want to adapt, it's a hard balance. And then I would say, like, the worst aspect from living abroad is that, if you're very close to family, or if you're close to your friends back home. For me, it's mostly about being close to family. um, what happens is that when you're very far from family, you become very friend dependent, or it's hard to fight loneliness in a way. Like, you find other mechanisms to compensate for that void that you have. Of course, you're always talking to your parents, and you have Skypes and so on, and they help a lot, but it's not really the same. You don't have that shot. Like, sometimes all I need is like a weekend, at my parents' place, or with my brother, just to get that shot of familiarity, and to see them and interact with them. And then I just feel like you feel safer. You feel safe, and you feel better. And you don't have that when you're living abroad. And maybe some people don't relate to this. I get that. If you're not very family focused, that's fine. But maybe with your friends, you miss your friends from back home. And yeah, it's tough. But in general, I wanted to say, like, every country has good and bad sides, of course, and you basically need to pick the one that has, the most bad sides, or the most tolerable bad sides. Or, sorry, you need to tolerate the bad sides, essentially, and enjoy the good sides. And right now, I was talking about, in general, like, the good aspects and bad aspects of being an immigrant. And I fucking need some water. And I would say overall, it's worth being an immigrant. But I wanted to talk about specifically, like Sweden and Germany, because I think some people might be interested in knowing a little bit more about these two countries. And yeah, I want to talk about my perspective, the good sides and bad sides. And I hope my listeners won't get offended. I really don't mean any harm. And I just want to say it from my perspective, like what I think about these two places. Specifically Berlin. I don't want to talk about Germany in general, because Berlin is very different from the rest of the country. But yeah, let's go with Sweden first. So what are the good sides of Sweden? So of course everyone speaks English. It's insane. Like, even old ladies speak English, and everyone can understand you. Even if you're not in Stockholm, like I was in Gothenburg, the second biggest city. And you can be in small cities and everyone speaks English, So that's really cool. Another thing is, like, how in general they're very open-minded, I need to be specific here. They're open-minded to, or very forward-thinking. So they try to look at a lot of social problems, and they try to update the way they think about things, and they try to be better in general, or more acceptant, or more tolerant towards people. And I think in general, that's, like, I really respect that about Sweden overall. And they have also a very humanitarian way of looking at the world. They care a lot about the environment. They care about creating sustainable measures for things. And this is not just the government, I'm talking about the people in general, like the whole culture. Like, they care about creating sustainable things. They care about the planet overall, and I think they care about social issues overall. And I really respect that about Sweden in general. Then of course, I mean, it's important to talk about, fuck it. Like, it's true. People are really attractive there. So that's definitely a plus as well. Both guys and girls are really good looking overall. Of course you can find really good looking people everywhere, but I would say the average, or the ratio of good looks is really high there for some reason. I don't know what they're eating, or what it is there, but yeah, I guess it's like people dress really well there, and they care a lot about looks in general. So yeah, people in general are quite attractive there. And I don't even mean, like ethnically Swedish people, so blonde and blue eyes and whatever. Like in general, people in Sweden, whatever your background culture is, like they just, I don't know, they just look better. I think clothes really really impact that. Um, and then the thing that I probably appreciate the most about Sweden, and one of the reasons why I went there, was that they're very efficient. Like they have a very efficient culture, in my opinion, and they always try to improve themselves in many different things. This is something that I really don't like about Portugal, for example. Like I feel like we're really inefficient and we don't improve ourselves in things. But I'm not going to criticize Portugal too much. Like we have some huge infrastructure problems. I think if we had, I don't want to get into this that much, but I think if we had better governmental plans, then at some point we would be like this as well. But in general, I'm just looking at what's right now, and they're really efficient. Like when you think of German efficiency, actually, I would say Swedish people are more efficient. If you think about it, like it's a country that's much less populated than Germany, and yet they've managed to achieve many many things, which are really impressive, both in industry and like in many like athletics and other music and other things. Like they're very efficient. They're very efficient. They're very, I don't like to use the word talented, but they perform really well. I think it's because they are really good at introspection and in improving what they currently have. And it's cool. I wanted to try to learn more about that um, when I moved there. But yeah, it's really interesting to see, and I definitely recommend people go there just to get an idea of how they work as a society. But now Sweden's bad sides, and I hope people don't hate me for this. But yeah, you can fuck off as well if you don't like what I say. Um, yeah, Sweden's bad sides. I would say Sweden is, yeah, it's a bit shallow as a country. Like, do you remember the beauty thing I said? I personally felt like when I was there, there's kind of like a standard that you need to meet there in terms of appearance, and I don't mean like your physical. I don't mean like your genetic appearance. I mean like in general appearance. There's like some kind of high standards there, at least in Gothenburg, and I think in Stockholm it's even worse. But yeah, I felt like the society was a bit shallow and too focused on beauty. You kind of saw that in like advertisements and like the way they try to push the gym and so on. Like I didn't feel it was more. It wasn't very about. It wasn't so much about health. It was more like the pushing the gym. It felt like it was more about aesthetics, and it can be a bit overwhelming, a bit annoying. Um, then the biggest flaw that everyone complains about is it's really hard to socialize there. It's just not very natural. So I have some Swedish friends, some really close Swedish friends, but I wouldn't say that they're very typical Swedish people. Like they're very atypical. Um, in general, it's quite hard to socialize with them. Like the idea is that they have a very a very rough shell, like very hard shell, and if you can break through that shell, then the inside is soft. So like it takes some time to become friends with Swedes, but then when you become friends with them, they're very, very close to you and they're very nice. And this is true, but think about it. Like if everyone you meet is like this, it's a bit frustrating. Like every social interaction just doesn't feel like you can, like things will happen spontaneously. Like you will spontaneously really click with someone and get really close to them. So for example, there's one syndrome uh, which I claimed this name, by the way. I called it the reset syndrome, and it's something that a lot of foreigners experienced in Sweden, which was, let's say that you go to class in university, and then there's like some kind of small get together, like some small party where people in your class meet and you have some drinks or whatever, it's very common that people would meet some Swedish people. They would get along really well. They would drink together. They would talk a lot. They would get really deep, like really connect a lot. And then the next day, they meet the person. It's like nothing happened. They just say hi, and that's it. And this is, I call this reset syndrome. Reset syndrome, and it happens a lot in Sweden. I don't know why this happens. It's really weird, and people get so confused. Like, what? We got along so well yesterday, and now nothing happened. And I don't know the reason behind that, but it does happen. So yeah, it can be very frustrating, and that's why a lot of people end up just sticking around the expats. Another bad point is the weather, of course, but you know what you're getting into when you go to Sweden. Another bad point, and this one is a bit controversial, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that any conservative view in Sweden is demonized. And I think it's really important to talk about this, especially because I feel like Swedish people themselves are scared of saying this. So I'm more of a left person in general. I tend to be more of a lefty. So you if you're on the left side of the spectrum, you'll adapt well to Sweden. But it frustrated me a lot because it felt like there is some sort of censorship in Sweden. Like, it feels like you can't say some things, or you'll be branded as a racist sometimes, or branded as a bigot, or it's very easy for someone to judge you for your views there. And it's frustrating because it feels like I think this kind of censorship hurts the country. It hurts its... Oh shit, that's the fast food. I guess my flatmate ordered fast food. Yeah, it's very easy to kind of censor someone there. And it's bad because if you keep doing this to people, you're not going to have a healthy discussion, and things get worse. And so one of the biggest topics is immigration, right? Immigration there. And I think it's worth discussing, and I think it's fine that some people have a more conservative approach to this. Maybe to open less doors and focus on integration of people rather than opening the doors to everyone and accepting as many immigrants as you can. There's many opinions that can be worth taking into consideration, but I feel like, particularly in Sweden, it feels like you can't say certain things or give opinions on certain things, and I didn't like that when I was there. But overall, I would say Sweden is a very interesting country, and I would definitely recommend that you go there. And of course, I only lived in Gothenburg, so I can't judge the whole country. This is just my perspective of living in one city, and it was my perspective as a student. But yeah, fuck. I've talked a lot about this. I think it would be also interesting to talk about Berlin. So like the good sides and bad sides of Berlin. I've got a few points to talk about. So like one of the reasons why I felt like Sweden was a cool country. I personally didn't adapt there that well, but I felt like it was a really interesting experience overall. And so one of the reasons why I moved to Berlin after was because I was kind of seeking something. I was looking for something that Berlin had that Sweden didn't have, and that was like so Berlin has a very open society in a way. So it's you can basically express yourself however you want, and it doesn't feel like you're judged that much here. So this is both in terms of looks and ideas. It just feels like you're not judged, and you can see it when you walk down the street. Like people don't really care. You can see all kinds of styles, like tattoos everywhere, piercings, crazy hairstyles, dressing like a homeless person, dressing like a goth, an emo, like a rave person. You can be super fancy, you can be whatever you want, really. And it's quite interesting. Then of course the weather's not as bad. It's quite moderate. And one of the biggest things, just a second, it's that it's a huge melting pot of cultures, you know. So when you come here, it's specifically Berlin. Like you get people from everywhere, fucking everywhere. Like U.S., Israel, um, many African countries. You got a lot of South American countries. You got um, Japan, China, Australia. A lot of Americans in general, British. Um, yeah, it's just very mixed. Berlin attracts a lot of people from all areas in the world, and that's super cool, of course, because then you have access to random food. You know, that's what I do. Like my weekends now is basically going out and exploring and trying to get different types of food. And then of course English is spoken quite a lot, and that's awesome. It helps you kind of smooth into the harsh German society. And you know, in the other benefits are kind of similar to Sweden. They have a really good social system. You basically feel safe all the time, and yeah, I kind of wanted to distinguish between them a little bit more, though, or I wanted to separate them a little bit. I would say like Germany is interesting in terms of industry. I would say like when you're working here, it's different from the Swedish approach. Like I think Germans end up being efficient or end up producing good results because they're very organized. They're very organized and they're very nitpicky and detailed. While in Sweden, it's more like they're proper efficient. They know how to manage their time properly. But in Germany, it's more about like hard organization, you know, and structure. It's kind of interesting. But let's talk about the bad sides. So the bad sides of Berlin, of course, um, everyone seems to have fucking mental issues here. Really, like I didn't expect it so much from Berlin when I came here, but yeah, it's just everyone. It seems like everyone has an issue. Um, like the dating life is weird here. I've heard this from many other people. Dating life is weird. Meeting people is strange in general. There's a lot of flaky people. Um, you know, there's quite a lot of drug abuse here. There are really weird things here, like a lot of sexually promiscuous places here. So, for example, one there's one techno club called Kit Kat, and Kit Kat is essentially like you need to go there in some kind of fetish outfits. So it can be like full leather or stuff like this. Very spicy outfits. And the idea is, yeah, you can go and dance, and most people are dancing, but you know, there's this 20% that is just having sex there, like literally just having sex. So you can be like dancing, and then there's like an orgy to your left or a gangbang to your right, you know. And I've heard many stories from different people. I personally haven't gone there. I don't have any interest in doing it so far. Um, but yeah, there's lots of crazy things, and that's not the only club. There's many things. I've heard like some friends of mine, they went to a bar, and like people were, so actually, yeah, yeah. Anyway, they went to a bar, and some people were looking at them. Actually, most of the people at the bar were looking at them, and it was a mixed group of girls and guys. They were looking at them and smiling, and they're coming over and saying, "Hi, how's it going? All good," but in a creepy way, you know, like they're touching them. All good, how's it going? It turns out that bar is an incest bar, so families go there to have like incest and to exchange, like swap. They had no idea. They just figured it out later, so it was kind of awkward. Yeah, and then another bad part of Berlin is how oh wait, I want to say one good side. There's one good thing, which is things are super strange here, like very random. You can find like really crazy things. So it can be really good and it can be really bad. Then uh primitive technology. This is one of the worst sides of Berlin. Like it's so Oh, it's so primitive here. Like internet sucks. The phone services suck. Um, just in general, everything is done on paper and pen, and they just don't implement technology at all, like at all. And I think it's a privacy thing. Like it's like a privacy paranoia here. Um, but it's fucking it's frustrating. Then of course you have some neo Nazis still around. Like my area, Shunavida, there are some Nazis here, um, which is a bit disturbing to say the least. And yeah, in general, there's a huge cultural difference between Germans and Swedish when it comes to personal behavior, right? So Swedes are often shy and distant socially, and Germans are really direct. Like they're not as direct as the Dutch, but they can be really direct and sometimes a bit annoying, in public. Like I've had situations that were super weird where, someone's yelling at me for something small. Like I'm walking. One time we were just talking about this actually. We were a group of three. We were walking down the sidewalk, and we were just discussing this, how Germans can be sometimes annoying, like obnoxious and complaining all the time. And we're walking down the sidewalk, and there's plenty of space, to overtake us or to pass us on the side. And this German woman, she just comes up behind us and said, and yells like, "Can I pass through?" And like, what the fuck? And this kind of situation, it can definitely happen a lot. And yeah, like in general, just the drug situation and some situations here are weird. You have people that are super high and like fucked up in the metro. They just don't look good, and you have really weird situations like they're yelling all the time. I have this crazy woman in our neighborhood. She every morning she's yelling. Like I'm working and she's walking around and she's yelling some random stuff. It's super weird. It's really really weird. Um, yeah, it's. But in general, I just wanted to say that I've talked about this for far too long, more than I wanted to. But I think it would be interesting for you guys to kind of get an idea of how it is to live in other countries, and if you have any interest in these two particular countries, is also cool. Would I recommend moving out of your country? Definitely. Find somewhere where like try to study like what are the potential bad sides of the countries that you want to go to, um, beforehand, so you have like a better idea. And yeah, definitely give it a shot. If you want to try Sweden and Germany, I recommend both countries. And let me know if you have more questions. If you have something you want to know, let me know. Before I end this podcast, because it's been quite a while now, I was talking about the same topic. Usually I like to jump, between topics, but I thought this one was really important to tackle. Um, I wanted to address a hypothetical situation, which I was talking to some friends about, and the situation is this. I think everyone has kind of thought about this at some point. If you had the power to listen to people's thoughts, and you can turn them on and off, would you take this power or would you reject it? Right? So if you had the offer, someone offered you to have this power, would you take it or would you not take it? And to some people, I think the answer is very obvious. They would just say immediately yes, because it's a way to acquire information that you don't have. So like it's just a matter of controlling yourself, and you can gain a lot from it. I just want to explore the two sides and kind of like see if I have an opinion on this. I'm still not 100% sure, but let's look at it, right? So if I say yes, I can listen to someone's thoughts. I can understand better how they feel. So it's definitely a double-edged sword in a way. Like I can, or yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword, which we will talk about later. But right now, I just want to say that there are a lot of pros to listening to people's thoughts, and it can be used for good or for bad, right? So, I mean, a lot of socializing is you try to understand how the person's feeling. You give your opinions on topics, and you hear through their words or see through their body language how they think about something, You can kind of gauge whether a person is lying or not. Um, and and so that's how you interact with people. You're constantly giving your opinions, you're hearing their opinions, you're looking at the way their body moves, um, and how they express themselves, and you kind of paint a picture for the person and how they feel. And that's kind of how you dance around things, right? So if you had like this, so in a way we are always trying to get information about the person, like how they're thinking, but we're never sure. There's always uncertainty. If you had a device that lets you listen to what people think, then you would know, okay, this is what this person thinks. So I would know whether or not they're lying, right? I can adapt my style of conversation to that. I can also get to know how they feel, so I can help them get over some things, or I can say the right things to calm them down, or I can, I can benefit from it too. It can definitely be explored. You can definitely manipulate this. For example, in dating, if you know what the other person's thinking, you can you'll have an easy time. You can easily, change your behavior to make the person feel better about themselves and to improve your relationship, or to improve your whatever it is. So it can it can be used for good. And it could definitely bring you a lot of benefits. I mean, you can gain so much from this. Also in business, especially in business, it would help you a lot to listen to people's thoughts. Um, and so, yeah, it seems like a great tool to have. But I think in my opinion, I was thinking about this a little bit before the podcast, and I think it's kind of like opening a Pandora's box, because as soon as you open it, you realize, okay, there's no more uncertainty. I can no longer send my opinions and not care about what the other person is going to feel. It's if you I think it's a power that would very easily corrupt you. And once you start using it, you would always check it for feedback. You'd say something and you'd try to see what the other person thinks. And I think in doing this, you would eventually you would become corrupt in one way or the other, which is you would try to manipulate the person to think the way that you want them to think, or you would change your behavior to adapt to the way they think. And so I think it would fuck you up, because you would either become a people pleaser, like completely change your personality to become more people pleasing, or to become more manipulative of other people. But then the question is, I mean, some people already have quite a natural talent in understanding how people feel, and they're very good at picking up body language signal signs. So in general, some people almost can read minds in a way. Um, are they manipulating people? Aren't we all kind of manipulating in a way? Aren't we all kind of trying to people please? Yeah, I would say yes. But having a device that like gives you this guarantee that you can do this, I think it would definitely ruin any social dynamic that you have, and it would just make things very artificial. I think you would become bitter as well. Like, you would learn that there are a lot of small lies that people tell, or maybe there are big lies, and you would just not be able to live a life where you minimize what you care about other people's opinions. You wouldn't be able to minimize the caring about other people's opinions, or it would be much harder, I would say, because you always have this option of listening to what people think. So would I accept it? Part of me wants to say yes, because it would be very practical to have this. But I think in general, I would say no. It would be cool to have it, to have the option, if I could just use it like maybe in a business situation or in very specific situations. But if I have absolute power, I don't know. I think it would corrupt me. It would definitely ruin me as a person. Um, yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think it would be scary. Like, I can see a lot of situations where it's kind of like you want to know the truth, but at the same time you don't. and you kind of just want to hope that the person's feeling the way that you feel. And yeah, it's food for thought though. I feel like I still need to think about this more, but that's my current opinion. And if you guys have any comments or have, any other perspectives, I would love to hear it, especially about this topic, because I feel like it's a hard topic, and I think for some people it's obvious, like, yeah, absolutely, and they won't change their mind on this, because I actually asked some people um, before, but I don't think it's that straightforward, this question. It seems like it is straightforward, but I'm not sure if it is. So if you have any opinions, let me know. If you have any opinions or questions about the immigrant topic, also let me know in the comments section, or just write to me. That's fine. If you have anything you want me to talk about or comment on, also let me know. Next podcast, we will have a guest, a very interesting guest. I won't spoil right now, but we will. It will be a lot to talk about. And I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a lovely rest of the weekend. Goodbye.